this training, or at any time you need support, there are many ways to contact us. You can follow us on all major social media platforms or email us directly via our website, or you can click the Cancel Connect icon shown at the bottom of this slide on our website to book a consultation with one of our experts.
Now that we have created the detailed maps, the team will get to work with the analysis of the process to uncover the root causes of the problem. They may be focused on a specific defect or a specific type of inefficiency, or they may be exploring the whole process to see what they discover. Either way, we rely on the foundational concepts of Lean and Six Sigma to confirm or fail to confirm our root cause hypotheses or to develop new ones.
When we're analyzing the process, we can look to the foundational Lean concepts of value, the value stream, and process flow to guide us in finding and confirming root causes of defects, of inefficiency, and too much variation. Let's do a quick review of these concepts.
Value is a term that is used in so many different ways and contexts. In Lean, this refers to the practice of examining each task or activity in a process, and then determining whether the steps actually add value from the perspective of the customer. This can be a very surprising exercise when we realize what proportion of our activities don't have anything to do with our customer. For a step to be considered value added, it must meet all three of the following criteria.
Number one, it must change the unit towards completion. This means that any step that doesn't actually change the unit doesn't qualify. So any step that's a check, an inspection, a review, for example, are automatically non-value added.
It must be done right the first time. This means that any step that includes the making, finding, or fixing of a problem or error cannot be considered value adding.
And number three, it must be important to the customer. This means that if the customer were told that this step is part of what they're paying for, it would make sense to them. So for example, if a supervisor wants an extra copy of a report put in a blue folder on Tuesdays, this is not likely something that the customer would be willing to pay for. This third criteria keeps us focused on what is important and relevant to the customer of the process.
The concept of identifying value-added steps is not an exact science, and it can spur quite a bit of controversy and discussion. Got to be careful though, there's a very fine line, and I've seen this get out of control pretty quickly. The point is to identify those critical steps in the process and then focus on those. See how we can eliminate or minimize the non-value adding steps.
So, value adding is any step in the process that changes the nature, shape, or characteristic of a product or service, is done right the first time, and is in line with what the customer wants. Typically, and this is surprising, only 5 to 10% of all process steps are actually value added.
Now don't get angry.
But if we're using our phone to make a deposit into the bank account, for example, an example of a value adding step would be the step that puts the dollars into my account. But all the previous steps that lead up to that, logging in, checking that I'm not a robot, answering the security questions, the post-deposit survey, etc., would not qualify as value adding.
A couple of important terms that go along with the concept of value added are non-value added and waste. Non-value adding is any activity that does not qualify as value added. This is everything that is not value adding. Steps or tasks that add cost or time without adding value. These steps may be essential, they may be necessary to do the job, but they are still non-value adding. And there are two types of non-value adding steps. Those that are necessary. These are called value enabling. For example, putting on PPE, compliance with regulations, workstation preparation, checking on progress, etc. And the second type of non-value adding step is waste. Waste in this context refers to process waste. This term does not refer only to physical waste, but refers to any step that costs time or money without adding or enabling value.
Learning how to recognize the 8 wastes and having the skill to know how to remove or minimize this waste is one of the ways that we improve our processes. Every activity in our process is either value-adding or non-value-adding, and the skill is knowing how to recognize and respond to waste. How many people came to work today to spend time on waste? Some maybe, but not most. Some waste is obvious, but other forms are more difficult to see and to solve. Some steps may seem wasteful but provide real value. Other activities may seem valuable but do not result in real value. And that's the challenge. Waste is really good at camouflage, and it blends very easily into our processes.
If we understand waste, we can eliminate it and make real improvements. This is one of the most important aspects of continuous improvement. If we can see it, feel it, and most importantly, feel uncomfortable around waste, then we understand it. And if we understand it, that means we can eliminate it.
Every process contains some amount of waste. The most important step is to identify the waste. A few seconds here, a few minutes there, multiplied by the number of people involved, the number of days, and pretty soon we're talking about hours, days, and years of wasted times. Instead of thousands of different problems and millions of different circumstances, process waste can be put into 8 categories, or 8 types of waste. These categories make it easier to identify and then easier to eliminate.
The first type of waste is a defect. Rejects, mistakes, errors, repairs, and rework. Defects directly affect the bottom line and usually come at a tremendous cost to any organization. The longer it is in the process, the greater its ultimate cost. Once a mistake is made, in order to minimize the loss, it must be caught early in the process. Defects always require some degree of additional attention, whether they are tracked, scrapped, reworked, or repaired, and these options may result in more waste. Consider all the confusion and delays that are typically associated with a defect or a mistake.
And the second type of waste, overproduction. This is creating something before it's needed. This is quite costly because it amplifies all other types of waste. Overproduction can lead to lower quality and lower productivity, and it can make it more difficult to detect defects. Overproduction is often done to cover an underlying problem. For example, if our product is cookies and we know that a lot of our batches come out bad, we might choose to just make more batches to cover for the loss of the bad ones. Slowing down and focusing on doing it right the first time is better than overproduction.
The third type of waste is waiting. Downtime, waiting for parts, components, raw materials, approvals, decisions, the previous person to finish their job, waiting for paperwork. A machine could be waiting for its next job. It could be that the part is waiting for something or the operator involved is sitting around waiting. Once again, waiting can be a waste that occurs in a transaction and the front office related to, such as waiting for a requisition to be approved, purchase order, or others to join a meeting. We do that a lot of times. Please be on time, people. People or units sit without usefully being serviced or processed, waiting for the next step in the process.
Waste number 4 is called non-utilized talent. That is the misuse or the underutilization of human resources. A company can get the most from its people where the people can apply their strengths most often, when they create an environment where they unlock the potential of the people doing the work. Everyone can contribute to varying degrees, and finding and enabling those most valuable contributions is challenging. Some are obvious since their job title can reflect their general expertise, but they may have other experiences and strengths to offer. Leaders and managers need to ask the right questions and learn by listening and continuously strive to get the most practical output from each person while maximizing the employee satisfaction. For a great work environment, employees need to feel motivated and they need to feel able to contribute their skills and their ideas. The other 7 wastes are more clearly identifiable, more quantifiable, and more easy to remove. This waste is both harder to see and harder to measure the results.
Okay, 4 more types of waste to cover. Waste number 5 is transportation, which refers to moving something through the process. Transportation adds no tangible value. It's only a cost. Transportation might be sending product to a customer via truck or airplane, or moving stock with a cart from one stage to the next stage. Or it can be electronic, such as sending information via email.
Waste number 6 is motion. When we speak about transportation, we're talking about the movement of material or goods. When we speak about motion, we're talking about the unnecessary movement of people. For example, walking an extra 10 steps from one workstation to the next when they could be moved closer together. It'll eventually add up to miles of wasted motion. Also, reaching, stretching for parts on the workbench when the material could be placed at a point of use could also be seen as wasted motion.
Inventory is next. Inventory waste is the unnecessary surplus of inventory, or it is also referred to as work in queue. So queues of work waiting to be done, an inbox of unread emails are examples of inventory waste. Inventory waste requires storage, handling, and can result in unused material costs, delays, and contribute to poor flow.
And lastly, we have extra processing, or overly complicated processes. This waste describes when complex methods are used when a simpler, less complex step would do. Extra processing compounds other waste by creating more steps to deal with the already existing issues. Over-polishing parts, sorting files that don't need to be sorted, heating food for too long or too high of a temperature, excessive cleaning, redundant paperwork, excessive data collection. If your process uses electric forms like an Excel, the lack of integrated systems, lack of creative and innovative spreadsheets, not using conditional formatting, validation, filtering, these can all lead to overprocessing when performing work with data.
Another great example of extra processing is cleaning. Consider spring cleaning when we've let dirt and disorganization accumulate for a whole year. Or those times when we are having visitors, whether at home or at work, and everyone has to scramble to clean and get things in order. Anytime we are cleaning or organizing, we should consider, how did it get this way in the first place, and why are we cleaning? The goal is to prevent mess and clutter as much as possible, and where it can be prevented, we address it at the time, before it turns into a big wasteful event. That is extra processing. So Claire, in your opinion, what do you think the most common wastes are that you've encountered?
It always depends on the type of business and the culture and how old the processes are. But I would say that waiting is the most obvious. That's the most easiest to see. But probably this extra processing or overly complicated processes is one of the top ones as well. What about you?
I agree. I think overcomplicating bureaucracy, before we have to go through so many steps before we can make a decision. But for me, one thing that I've realized, and I'm glad we spoke about cleaning, is people see cleaning as adding value, and cleaning does not add value. We should go back and find the reasons why it got dirty in the first place.
Yeah.
Fix that, and we don't have to clean, and we can spend that on value-added steps.
It's the same thing as fixing a defect. You have to do it, but why did it happen to begin with?
Exactly.
It's a good point. For an easy way to remember the 8 types of waste, you'll notice that the first letter of each of the types of waste actually spells out the word downtime. Defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and excess processing.
Or alternatively, many organizations use the acronym Tim Woods. I met him last week. We just rearrange the words and the order of the waste and modify a couple of names. For Tim Woods, it's transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing. Instead of the E for excess processing, and defects and skills unused instead of non-utilized talent.
If you recall our template that we introduced back in the process observation section, the notes are organized in the categories of the 8 wastes. This form is already set up this way to allow the team to recognize the different types of waste as they observe the process, so it all ties together.
In your workbooks is a list of examples of waste. Look through the list and see if you can identify which of the 8 wastes best fits this example. You'll notice pretty quickly that many examples of waste fall into multiple categories. This is because waste typically causes more waste. For example, a form is filled out incorrectly. That's a defect. So it has to be brought to the supervisor, which is transportation, and then corrected, which causes waiting. Pause this video now and see if you can match the example wastes to at least one of the 8 wastes. Welcome back. How did you do on that exercise? We hope that it got you thinking about waste and opportunities in your own lives and processes. Now let's do another practice. This time we'll calculate the cost of waste. In your workbook is a table with all the information you need to calculate the amount of waste in 1 year just from walking to and from the printer. This is an actual example from a team that we worked with. They tracked the number of trips to the printer and the number of employees. Use the data provided to see how many days per year are wasted. Pause the video now and try this simple practice.
Now that you understand the types of waste, you'll begin to see what we actually do with our detailed process map once it's been created. With the detailed process map done, the team can identify the different types of waste right there on the map. A common method is to use sticky dots or colored markers to identify the 8 wastes. And then the team talks through the map with the process experts and tracks the specific waste right on the map. Most often, they'll discover big clusters of waste in specific areas of the map. This helps the team to recognize and develop a deeper understanding of the root causes of the problem.
The sticky dots provide the visual, but each dot corresponds to a detailed description of waste, which the team will track as part of their analysis. And how beautifully it all comes together in our awesome 1-point lesson for the 8 wastes. Remember, although this is not difficult to understand, it can be very tricky to see waste in our own processes, especially if we've been working in an area or a position for a very long time. And we can't eliminate it if we can't see it or find it. The worst kind of waste is the kind that we don't see.
If your project is focused on time or efficiency, you'll likely be very focused on identifying non-value-added steps and time. In your Cancel templates, you'll find a form to organize a time and value analysis using your detailed process map. The value and time analysis gives you a place to record each step and decision point in your detailed process map. And then continuing through the form, we identify whether a step is value-added, non-value-added, or value-enabling. If a step is value-adding, you'll select the number 1 from the drop-down. If not, just select a 0. Using a 1 and a 0 in these fields allows us to do the total calculations at the bottom of the form.
Pretty simple. As with all of our templates, each field has a note to define the field, so you don't have to commit these definitions to your memory, which, like mine, is getting a little bit old. The yellow fields indicate free-form text, the green fields indicate that drop-down lists is provided, and the gray fields with the orange text indicate that the field is an automated calculation. These calculation fields will use the data that you entered to derive the totals at the bottom of the form.
On the right portion of the form, there's a space to record the time for each process step. The form distinguishes work time from wait time. If we watch a single unit going through the process, so if the unit going through the process is a request, and the process step is to review the request, these time fields ask you to identify the amount of time that the request is sitting there waiting to be reviewed versus the actual work time it takes to perform the review itself.
Because both the work and wait times can vary from unit to unit or person to person, or even day by day, the final column in this form allows you to provide a little insight into the degree of variation. If we say that the typical work time is 10 minutes and the typical wait time is 1 day, the question is, how much do those numbers vary? If they are pretty consistent and stable, we'd rate the variation low. The options for these fields are 1, 3, and 5 for low, medium, and high. These totals allow you to see the proportion of value adding, non-value adding, and value enabling steps and time in the process.
And to keep things organized for you, we have the 1-point lesson, your handy one-pager for using the value and time analysis template. Just to give you a sneak peek into the impact that your process analysis can have, this is an example of a government customer of ours, and the process was getting an open position posted. This is the map of the process with waste identified with the sticky dots and time identified on the purple and pink stickies. The average cycle time to get an open position posted was 120 days, and 40% of all jobs waiting to be posted were over 160 days since the request.
Sounds familiar? After the process analysis, the teams were able to remove the majority of the waste, and the new process looked like this. The new cycle time is an average of 4 hours. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Just wanted to give you a little taste of how impactful this could be and to remind you why we go through all of this analysis.
The value stream is another one of the Lean foundational concepts, and it can shed a little more light on the value stream map. Using our value stream map, we can identify the vital steps that facilitate an efficient process, as well as the unnecessary steps that result in waste. The objective is to optimize the flow of work through minimizing non-value-adding steps and to create an effective value stream. As we look at the chain of those value-adding steps in the process, we can get a picture of the value stream.
The concept of flow is all about eliminating those steps in the process that cause interruption, rework, backwards flow, delay, and defects. Think about water flowing through a pipe. We want the water to flow continuously and come out fast and clean. A clogged pipe would cause the water to become sludge, moving slowly, sticking to the pipe, and getting worse over time. A process that moves seamlessly and swiftly from one task to the next has good flow. Understanding the types of waste, you can see a relationship between them. A defect will cause waiting because it must be fixed before moving through the process. This will cause accumulation of work in progress, which is inventory. Extra processing or overly complex steps slows work and leaves us more open to defects. Overproduction in a step causes an accumulation of work that must be managed.
Using our value stream map, we can analyze the inventory and the wait time between process steps, as well as analysis of the work time throughout the process. It can give us great insight into where our process flows and where it stagnates. Some of the most common causes of poor flow are distance, layout, duplication, rework, waiting, and for sure, interruptions. Poor flow not only prevents our product from reaching the customer quickly and done right the first time, it also contributes to a lot of frustration for people who work inside the process.
When our work or flow is interrupted, time increases and the quality of our work decreases, and this is frustrating. There's a lot more stress involved in the starting and stopping action, and in the end of the day, it's just not as enjoyable as what it should be. Part of understanding flow is to really understand the cost of poor flow.
One of the tools that's used to visualize flow is called a spaghetti map or spaghetti diagram. It's a graphical representation using a continuous flow line, tracing the path of an item or an activity through a process. Mapping the continuous flow line enables process teams to identify opportunities to expedite the flow.
In the 1-point lesson for the spaghetti diagram, you'll see an example of how a team used the map to illustrate and measure the before and then the after analysis. They used the map to show areas with a lot of opportunity to improve. And in the third map, they showed the improved process, or the after picture. In each map, they included the path through the process, as well as the distance and time for the person in the process.
As we're examining our process and adding more and more detail to our map, we can also use photos to document findings and opportunities. We can add these photos directly to the map at the place in the process where they occur, and we can keep the photos with our project documentation.
It has been our sincere pleasure being with you through this part of the training, and we thank you for your dedication to creating a better workplace and an environment that you can truly enjoy.